He's
And
muted.
Paul, you're muted, but I saw your mouth move, so I'm
That is correct. I'm the only one here from the town.
gotcha. And Crystal, you can slide that all over that thing back over if you don't mind. That'll work. From Oro Valley, Cheryl, GJ, I've got both of you. Is that it from Oro Valley?
Yes.
Okay. From Marana, I've got Fausto Burrell on this end, and nobody was planning on joining you virtually, correct? Okay. I did not see any representative from the TO Nation. Okay. Paskuyaki Tribe. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is Patricia Pablo. I'm on for the Tohono O'odham Nation.
Gotcha, Patricia Pablo. Patricia, good to see you again. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you.
Paskuyaki Tribe. Saw anybody on that one? Okay. ADOT, Jay Gomes. I thought I saw you on there. Did I see that correctly? Jay, are you here? Crystal?
Yeah, good morning, Rick. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. From Pima County here in the building, we've got Catherine Skinner and Michael Medina. Is there anybody on virtually from the county? I believe Michelle Montanino, you were going to check in. Don't have a Michelle. Okay. From Tucson, I've got Blake Olafson, Francisco Leva, Robin Rain. Did I miss anybody else? I see Greg Orsini.
I'm in here as well. This is Shelley.
Shelley Jen.
And Blake Richards. Good morning, everyone.
Blake R. Okay. Anybody else from the city that I missed? All righty. Let's see. From U of A, who's going to be a co-presenter. Who do we have from U of A?
Here. So I'm Xiaofeng Li from UOA.
Okay.
And Yao Wu, U of A.
Fantastic. Thank you. And then from the PAG side of the house, let's see. I've got Carolyn Laurie, Insu No, Nathan Barrett, Dr. Richard Nassy, Sonia, Jeff, Crystal, Paul Casertano, Josh, David Zinda. Anybody I missed? Ryan?
I'm a little hurt right now, Rick, but yes, I've Gabe Thumb here as well.
Okay, who gave Gabe the direction and told him to make it? Oh man, we tried to ditch you, bud. Sorry about that.
And good morning, Rick. Jamie Brown is here as well.
Jamie, you were able to make fantastic. Gotcha.
James Takishi as well. Whoop.
Oh, sorry, James.
James Takishi as well. Go for it, Ryan.
Ryan Hatch.
Ryan Hatch, fantastic. Good to see a good turnout on this. Is there anybody during the roll call that I've missed? Okay. Let's see. I'm going to go around for a couple because we do have multiple representatives. We're only allowed one voting member per jurisdiction. So Cheryl, GJ, who's going to serve as the voting member for Oro Valley?
I will.
Okay. Catherine and Michael, with Michelle not being on, which one of you two would like to take it?
I can vote.
Okay. If she does show up, I'll punt that back. Tucson, we've got several representatives who would like to serve as the voting member on this.
Blake Richards.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay. Everybody else had a single representative and that covers us. All right, gang, that's introductions. Okay, Crystal, I'm good with that one, thank you. The in-kind reporting, as you've all seen through various other committees and as we've talked about on previous ones, our regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by the attendees and participants and the volunteers as well. PAG collects this data on the time dedicated to the meetings and activities so that we can apply for matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you are paid during this activity with federal dollars, please let us know. Otherwise, time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by those of us who are familiar, knowledgeable with the agenda, the meeting materials, and the activities. And at the conclusion, we will automatically calculate and report the time spent during this meeting. Time spent working on the PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. Okay, next item up. So we've got a very loaded agenda, as you've seen from what I've sent out. And one of the big items that we've been wanting to hear an update on is from Hyun-Soo Noh and his counterparts within the University of Arizona on some recently completed traffic data analysis activities. So Hyun-Soo, the floor is all yours. I'd like to turn it loose to you, and please take us away.
Okay, thank you. And let me just check the control and if it works or not. Okay, yeah, a little slow, but it's working. Thank you all for us to have an opportunity to share the PAG's recent project with the TSSS committee members and partners. My name is Hyun-Soo Noh, and the model manager at PAG. Here, I am with James Takeshi and the Ryan Hatch for this PAG team, and as well as just the UA team and Yao. And would you like to introduce to yourself and your team today?
Okay, thank you, Dr. No. So I'm Yao. So I'm the PI of the project. I'd like to thank the PAG support and to let us work with all the jurisdictions together to work on this data project. It's been really fun in the past 1.5 years. So as you guys can see, Xiaofeng Li is a major team member on the team. He has been helping me with the project. And the same with Peipei Xu, she's also online, but you cannot see her. But both of them worked really hard on this project. And as you guys can see, Xiaofeng just got his PhD, so now it's Dr. Li. So since he got his PhD, I can say less words. Okay. So today, actually, I'm not going to talk a lot. But if you have any question about the project, feel free to reach out to me and Dr. No. We'll be happy to answer any questions. So today is basically Dr. No, especially Dr. Li's showtime. So you're gonna hear a lot from Dr. Li. He knows every single detail of this project. So feel free to give him a hard time, okay? So he just passed his defense, PhD defense. So he's really good at defending himself. Okay, sorry, Dr. Li, okay? So he was my student, so I can joke, okay? Don't give him a hard time, please, okay? So, okay, I'm good, thank you, Dr. No.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wu. So here's the agenda and today's presentation, and I will discuss about the intro, including background, the purpose of and brief update of this project, and the UA team and the Dr. Li, Xiaofeng Li, will discuss about the main portion of the development and analysis. First, the data evaluation, sampling method for proposed model validation. Second, sample video-based data collection and analysis results. Third, the test and analysis with crowdsourced data. And fourth, and we will discuss about the integration method and the acceptance criteria development to how to maintain just the quality of data. So, in the introduction and the PAG's initiatives, and PAG and RTA have been trying to just improve our regional transportation system, and especially as an MPO, just the PAG is bringing a lot of energy on just the planning side, and such as the TIP and RMAP, the short and long range transportation planning. To develop these plans, and we follow the federal requirements. I'm sorry, it's not working. Okay, so here, sorry. And to develop these plans, so we follow the federal requirements and develop and appropriate planning models, and especially for the TDM, and we should validate the model with the local data, and see here just the camera 20 movement count, or just segment counts, and there is just the tube count method. So this traffic count data is not only for just a good resource to understand the regional traffic system, but also is used for actual roadway project and modeling outputs and performance measures. and developed with either by just the PAC models and the independent analysis, and use local sources of data frequently used and to evaluate the list of projects submitted from the jurisdictional partners. On the other hand, jurisdictional partners, the UBN, just working hard and on the actual roadway project, and as well as like the congestion improvement, and that's just a lot of work, and especially this traffic monitoring system, including the camera and tube count. I'm sorry, just a loop detector, and then here is another data source, crowdsourced data, which is now quite popular and easy to access this data, and so which is quite valuable. Here we are sure that this data will be valuable to improve and support the PAC's data collection, and also supporting our improving our traffic count program. So, and hoping to get and access the data or available and evaluate, and this presentation will cover this most of part development side. And so also first for PAC to initiate the TISMO and ITS planning effort. And so nowadays it's quite a popular topic, the TISMO. So we are kind of now interested in this kind of the TISMO and ITS and the territory. So for this project, and we are trying to get some answers for all the questions here, and what kind of regional traffic data is available, and where are the sources of data, and how are the data interrelated, and how to integrate the data, and how to maintain the quality of data. This might be the final kind of the goal we'd like to achieve through this project. And the most of the questions that will be answered in through this phase 1 data evaluation, use sample traffic data from multiple sources to develop and the estimation and the integration methodology and acceptance criteria. So, so this is phase 1 is most of the parts of today's presentation, and if it's implementable, then we are moving to the phase 2 large scale the implementation. So, but we are now working on in the phase 2, which means that it's actually valuable, the phase 1. And so then, I'm sorry, then here's the same and addressed earlier, and the Dr. Lee, and we'll discuss phase 1 development of integration methodology and acceptance criteria with the multi-source traffic data. And I'd like to highlight another important point in terms of understanding the procedure of today's presentation, especially for phase 1. So first, UA team for this project has actually developed the machine learning model, like estimating the turning movement count, the count, turning movement count, and the model actually calibrated with the existing traffic count and collected by PAC until 2019. Then based on the literature review and initial evaluation, the UA and the PAC teams actually developed the acceptance criteria. Then after then developed the model and was validated with the data set PAC collected in last year, 2024 season. So then the model reviewed and with the developed acceptance criteria. So now I will hand it over to the presentation to Dr. Xiaofeng Li, and maybe Crystal. Great. Yeah, Crystal will hand over to the control.
Okay, so now I think I can. Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. No. So the first task is to evaluate multiple data sources collected by different type of sensors and develop the sampling methodology for determining the location for ground truth data collection. Okay, So I want to acknowledge stakeholders in the PAG region for providing this sensor information. Thanks Tom Morena, Orvedi, Saurita, City Tucson, Pima County DOT, and ADOT. All the sensor information are summarized in this Google Map. So if you are interested, you can click this Google Map to take a look at the sensor brand and the location. According to the results of the sensor inventory, multiple types of sensors are used in the PAG region, such as loop detectors, video-based sensors, radar-based sensors. The most popular sensor used in the PAG region is the video-based sensors, autoscope sensors, and mild vision. In addition, some intersections are found to configure with 2 different types of sensors and 1 intersection. We also interviewed some sensor vendors regarding the what kind of data can be collected and the collection method and the data storage. Our latest sensors can collect most traffic parameters such as volume, speed, occupancy, and provide either software and API for remotely data downloading. For example, Autoscope Vision is the latest autoscope sensor, can store data for around 8 to 10 years. My Vision can store the data into the cloud indefinitely. 2 major data sources are utilized in this project. The first one is the data collected from the MaxView system, and the second data source collected is from mild vision sensors. Okay, some sensors can provide volume data automatically. In this task, we collected the volume data from different video-based sensors and evaluated the data accuracy. Currently, there are 3 types of video-based sensors used in the PAG region and can provide volume data: autoscope, mild vision, ITRs. So we first collected the volume from autoscope sensors and Speedway and Euclid. Usually, 2 types of detectors are used in an autoscope camera: advanced detector and stop bar detector. So by comparing the autoscope volume data with ground truth data collected by PAG, the volume data collected by stop bar detector have higher performance. As you can see in this plot, the R-squared value is 0.98, very high. We also evaluated the autoscope volume data by turning movement, and the results show right turn volume yields lower accuracy. The R-square is 0.67, lower than through movement and left turn movement. In order to evaluate the mild vision volume data, we selected the 4 intersections to collect the mild vision data. The comparison between the mild vision and the ground truth data is as shown in this top plot. The overall R-squared value is 0.8, but there are some data points that have underestimation issue. This issue is due to that La Cholla River, that intersection has a relatively lower performance. The percentage of RMSE is 50%, is relatively high. Okay, so currently some intersections can collect the volume data automatically, but most intersections are not able to provide the volume data 24/7. Most of the synchronized intersections are able to provide event-based data collected by MaxView system. So therefore, we utilize the event-based volume-based data to estimate volume data, which is more efficient and can save more money and time. The event-based data is collected by the Maxview system, including the events collected from the push-button device, detection detectors, and the controllers. All events are saved into the database in the CT Tucson, and the UA is backing up the data every 4 weeks from the CT Tucson server to UA server, database server. The event-based data is different from the video-based volume data. So as shown in this screenshot, you can see there are multiple detectors, and there are some virtual loops are used for volume data collection. The volume data is transferred into either a memory card or the cloud, depending on the sensor brand. Event-based data is collected by the detection detector, and shown in this bar, and transferred into controller. Controller transfer the data to the database server. So here are some events are collected by Maxview system. So there are 3 important events can indicate the traffic arrival and the data quality, phase events, detection events, and communication events. The traffic volume and an intersection is affected by multiple factors. So a machine learning based method, MLP, is used to estimate the turning movement count, left turn, right turn, and through movement volume. So in addition to the event-based related variables I mentioned in the previous page, intersection layout and the point of interest related variables are also used as model inputs. So the model structure is as shown in this plot, including the input layer, hidden layers, and output layer. So the ground truth data collected by TAG from 84 intersections are used to calibrate and evaluate the proposed model. The evaluation results are as shown in these 3 plots, using different measures, RMSE, R squared, and percentage RMSE. The evaluation results show the right turn movement has lower performance than left turn and through movement. So we evaluated the multiple data sources, autoscope volume, my vision volume, and the estimated turning movement count data. The evaluation results are summarized in this table. The results show the autoscope data has high performance because a single camera is installed for each approach at 1 intersection. The estimated TMC using event-based data has a relatively low performance, but however, the estimated TMC can cover a large area. In addition to the video-based volume data and the event-based data, there are some crowdsourced data available in the tag region, INRIX data, HERE data, and streetlight data. The INRIX data is collected by using the API provided by the ADAS. The INRIX data can provide a minute-to-minute XD segment speed and travel time. HERE data can also provide a free API, which has been used to develop a program by UA. HERE data can also provide the speed and the travel time data. Streetlight data can provide an insight platform for users to get traffic measures like the volume. So we first evaluate the INRIX data accuracy. We collected the ground truth GPS data on golf links. The comparison is as shown in this bar plot. The MAP of INRIX data is 15.1%. The INRIX data overestimates the ground truth speed data during the most periods, as shown in this plot. Then we compare the here data and the INRIX data on another corridor. We collected the GPS data on COPE. According to the comparison results, the MRAP of here data is 26%, and the MRAP of INRIX data is 25%. These two data sources have similar accuracy. Some of you may use the streetlight data before. So streetlight data can provide long-term average volume data. In order to evaluate this long-term average volume data, 1 year of my vision volume is collected from 115 intersections. The comparison between the streetlight data and my vision data is as shown in this top plot. The R-square is 0.84. As you can see, there are some zero values indicating either data source may have limitations and small intersections. We also evaluated the MyVision data by hour of the day and show in this plot. During the nighttime, the MRAP of streetlight data is relatively high. During the daytime, most intersections have the MRAP lower than 50%. Okay, so this task focuses on developing integration method and acceptance criteria. We first try to include the INRIX speed data in our MLP model to see the model performance could be improved or not. Based on the evaluation results, with and without the INRIX speed, there is no significant difference. So we decided to not use INRIX data in our model. And on road segments, there are only few locations configured with mid-block sensors to collect the segment volume, which is an important parameter for traffic studies. The segment volume is highly correlated with TMC and upstream intersection and downstream intersection. And we have estimate TMC and those intersections. Then the TMC data and upstream and downstream intersections are utilized to estimate segment volume. So the methodology is as shown in this plot. The QA/QC procedure is developed for multiple data quality control. In the developed QA/QC procedure, there are three major components. The first step is to check data issue. And the second step is to clean the data. Finally, the acceptance criteria is developed. So here is the logic of the acceptance criteria development, including the define data customers, literature review, and sample data evaluation. So we first summarize the previous studies regarding data evaluation. The results are summarized in this table, including the loop detectors, otoscope sensors, and the MyVision sensors. So according to the literature review and sample data evaluation, the acceptance criteria is developed and shown in this table for different data sources. The best criteria thresholds are used for otoscope data, and the lowest criteria thresholds are used for estimated TMC. So more ground truth data is collected by PAC for further evaluating different data sources for evaluating MyVision data, estimated TMC, and segment volume. Data collected and three intersections are used to evaluate MyVision data. The comparison is as shown in these three plots. La Cholla and River has lower performance. The R-square is only 0.66. The other two locations has very high performance, the R square over than 0.9. We also evaluated the data by turning movement. Left turn and through movement yield a high performance, but the right turn has an underestimation issue as shown in these 3 plots. Uh, 50 intersections are selected to collect more ground truth volume data as shown in this plot, including 4-leg intersections and few 3-leg intersections. The volume data cover both peak hours and off-peak hours. The data is collected for evaluated estimated TMC. So here is the overall comparison between the estimated TMC and the ground truth volume data. The R square is 0.85 and the RMSE is 30 vehicles per 15 minutes. Here is a comparison by intersection. The proposed model has a high and reasonable performance and most intersections, as you can see from this plot. Few intersections have low performance, and we found that those low intersections with low performance are on Broadway and showing these 2 intersections, so which is on construction. So the traffic patterns have changed due to construction. So the proposed model cannot handle this situation. 3 measures, MAP, percentage RMSE, and R squared, are used to qualify the estimated TMC accuracy. The results show right turn has low performance as expected. In addition to evaluate the model performance during peak hour, we also evaluated model performance during both peak hours and off-peak hours from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. The comparison by intersection are as shown in this plot. So the results are similar to the results during peak hours, indicating the proposed MLP model is potential for volume estimation during off-peak hours. 10 segments are selected to collect the ground truth segment volume data for segment volume estimation method evaluation. So here is the 10 locations. Here is the comparison by location. The method at most locations have high performance. A few locations have low performance, as shown, for example, for these 2 locations, which is likely because of the inaccurate estimated TMC and either upstream or downstream intersection. I think that's all I have for this project. So I will transfer to Dr. No for summarizing the major findings in this project.
Hey, Xiaofeng, thank you. And could you just forward the presentation slides? You have a stick control.
Okay, should I give up the remote control?
You did. Crystal, then just can I have the control? Oh yeah, you got it. Great, thank you. And here's the findings. And for 18 months, we tried to get some answers for the questions addressed earlier. And here are some the findings. And the first, estimated TMC and the segment output are good to use. And as you see here, and especially for just a supplemental data source. And I'm not sure just that you noticed that, which is actually is the 15-minute the time, and which is quite just accurate and compared to other available just the data source and site. And usually just provide like just the 90% and the accuracy for just a 30-minute or just 1 hour and time frame. So which is pretty good, but we realized that and we need some just improvement and considering just multiple just input and issues and as well as some just the parameter just changes for some cases. And an additional effort to estimate the segment counts from TMC office found a high correlation between the estimates and the ground truths. So I'm not sure just how you understand, but we actually used a pair of this continuous two intersection count data to estimate just the segment count. And so, highly dependent on that, just the data quality on the turning movement count to estimate just the segment count. So I have to just update that, and especially just for turning movement count. Also, there are some just internal, like just access and travel behavior sometimes different, then just it couldn't just the match and correctly. So we found some issues, and I think just that we can further and develop the model. And as just Dr. Lee mentioned about we applied daytime, the midday, and the turning movement count validation, but so far just we never collected like as the midday and especially for turning movement count other than just the peak periods. So the model actually was developed in the calibration, and developed using just the peak periods. So the behavior and the output should be different, and for the midday and the time. So we have to just calibrate the further just the midday and this is the turning movement count estimation. And we picked the MLP and for our just the machine learning algorithm, but there are the other just the machine learning algorithms that we can consider. So we'd like to kind of just consider in the different just the machine learning algorithms and the inputs and the parameters, such things. And additionally, also we realized that we need to improve the model for some mismatch, and especially for roadway segments with low volume and 3 directional lanes, 6 lanes roadway facility. So most data points we use for our model calibration is 6 lane in the high volume cases, but the recent roadways developed and have like a low volume and for the 6 lane in the roadway facility. So we need to improve and for the case. And then just another point in the current model, just as I mentioned earlier, is only just considering like just the segment volume estimation, using the continuous and the 2 intersections count data. So we'll hope to just improve and additionally. And then just we kind of just the my vision is pretty good. So for that reason, actually we only just selected in the 3 sample locations, but we found just the specific location might be just some issue setup and or just which might be related to kind of just the background image of the camera. And sometimes just the my vision and it appears kind of a little bit dark, then just it doesn't show is the good result. So this is the most of just our findings. And next. And then, so, and we are just moving to, as I mentioned earlier, just the phase 2. We are now applying the developed models and the procedure to the entire region, and hope to share the updated result with you soon. And then just the next. So here's the whole just the PAC team and the university team, but we'd like to just because of just I think it's a town of Marana. I'm not sure just Michelle, no, Dion is here, but we'd like to request the Pima County and for My Vision API access, and there are many modules developed through this project, and including the machine learning model and the numerous input preparation models, and which was just requires for us to have access to the max view and the My Vision data. So PAC team is now just testing a full procedure with the UA team, and including just the data access to the max view and My Vision. Generously, City of Tucson allows for us to have a max view data. So we'd like to kind of ask and PCDOT and API okay for us to access the data through just the My Vision API. And we can discuss with the My Vision team, and well, we can gather this process if you could do that. thank you. Then just I'd like to just one more and the things and about the PACS traffic count program, and we're going to collect this year the full season and the traffic, and mostly just managed by just James Tokishi here together. And we coordinate all years with our just the jurisdictional partners, and especially for turning movement counts and for its signal and timing evaluation. However, for the requirement of following the guide from the ADOT HPMS reporting, and especially for new functionally classified roles and minor collectors, and is now included in the data set. So we have to just collect just many and minor collectors to just submit to ADOT, and which were not counted before. We hadn't just counted that just the minor collectors. So now we have roughly around 900 just segment count locations to collect within several years, within 3 years or some time. So, but if you have any just segments or just the intersections you are interested in, would like to just coordinate with you, and so feel free to reach out to just James or me or just anyone at PAC. And thank you. And if you have any questions, please let me or just a cell phone or just the Dr. Who knows. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate the presentation and the good information. At this time, while we've got those guys, are there any questions from any of the committee members regarding what you saw, or anything else that what they've discussed, presented, or shared?
Paul, I just had a question for Hinsu on the timing of contacting PAG staff about the traffic count program. I want to make sure that we give them enough time to take a look at what their needs might be for traffic count data field collected, but I don't want it to be too late for James to make any necessary adjustments to the upcoming collection program. So is end of the month the right time frame, or should they contact you guys earlier, or what's the right time period for that?
Yes, and normally just that we collect the traffic count in September, and usually second week of September. So we don't have just a lot of just time to just for us all together to review. So we hope to just deliver in the first draft listing and sometime in the next week, and then just maybe hope to just get back the response and within a week.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, thoughts to share with the team?
By any chance, do you guys collected the age of the detection systems in the region? See how old our detection system is?
Could you repeat that again? The H system? I cannot hear well.
Just wondering if you guys collected also as part of your study how old the equipment is.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. So mostly kind of just the brand name and the type of the sensors, and but I don't think we collected just the year of just that actually sensor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
From a Pima County perspective, the La Cholla and River intersection, I just took a look at it, is, although it has 2 cameras, the TMC was not set up as a 2-camera setup. They rolled out the ability to do turning movement counts on 2 cameras after we had already started deploying some of the systems, and we haven't necessarily gone back and been able to catch back up. So definitely keep in touch with me as far as which other locations you want to evaluate, and I will make sure that those are properly set up for you.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you, Michelle.
Okay, last call. Okay, Insoo, thank you and the team. Great presentation, great information. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to come meet with us and give us a great update on that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Next item up is the PAG safety activities. Gabe, the floor is yours, my friend. What you got? What you know?
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all virtually and some in person there. I know we have a really full agenda, so I'm just going to roll through real quick, starting with road safety assessment updates on some of our activities. Just want to let everybody know we have performed a road safety assessment for the town of Marana. Deanne asked us up there to look at a particular intersection at Meredith and Ina. We chose to go the mini RSA route, which I think some of you are familiar with. It's where we don't hire a consultant. It's for smaller scale projects. Maybe you have 1 or 2 questions about a particular corridor or intersection. And typically Dr. Nassi and myself will go out there and we'll be able to knock it out pretty quickly. And it's a smaller scale project, smaller scale effort. But if somebody wants something with a quick turnaround, we can do that. So we did an evaluation and a report for that. So that has been submitted to the town. We just yesterday received an application from the city of Tucson for grant design stages 5 and 6, or for RTA stages 5 and 6. So that's going to be a design level RSA. That's going to take place in probably a month or so. So we'll keep you updated on that. About 3 weeks ago, we received an application from the city of Tucson for Congress and Grande. That's going to be an in-person road safety assessment, a standard one. We're looking forward to doing that. We're going to be out in the field. We're going to have to work out the logistics with pandemic conditions and how we're going to do that in person, but it's one intersection, so it should be pretty feasible with how we do that. Just as a reminder to the group and to all our member jurisdictions are that the road safety assessments are something we provide for free to our member agencies. They are formal evaluation of roadways, intersections, design plans, etc. Please let us know if you have any use of that. If anything comes up, if you have any questions, like I said, it's very scalable. We can go from mini RSAs to a full-blown RSA, and we can do design RSAs as well. So we're a service for you. So please make use of us. Anybody have any questions on road safety assessments right now? Okay, moving on. Safety Explorer. Safety Explorer is still being widely and regularly used. We're really happy with everybody's continued interest in it and use of it. I think not a week goes by for sure. I was going to say not every other day goes by without either a consultant or jurisdictional staff member mentioning to me, "Oh, hey, I was on Safety Explorer, or I used Safety Explorer for something." It's still really popular and widely used. Let us know if there's any other types of activities or analyses you'd like to see on there, any other functionality you'd like to see added on there.
Gabe, along those lines, I don't remember where I was, and I thought you and I were talking about the 2020 safety data has been uploaded or something along those lines. Is the latest and greatest been plugged in?
It is. 2020 has been uploaded. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for confirming that.
Gabe, this
Yes.
is Josh. It's gonna be we're in the process.
Oh, I thought it was up and running.
Yeah, no, it's it's in the internal site for our review, but we need to get the
Gotcha.
map services published, and that didn't happen last week, so it should happen this week. And then once we stuff through the QC, so it should be next week.
Okay, thanks, Josh.
Sorry about that.
And then lastly, update on HSIP call for projects. I talked to state safety engineer from ADOT, Kerry Wilcoxon, last week. And as you may know, they had planned to issue in July a call for projects for the HSIP monies. And Jay Gomes, correct me if I'm wrong with anything I say, or if you know more, please feel free to add on to it. But talking with Kerry last week, he said it's still slow going. They're still planning on doing a call. It'll be, he says, crossing his fingers, he's hoping it'll be before the end of the calendar year. They had kind of teased August and September. We're already almost halfway through August, so I'm thinking maybe, hopefully, by October we'll have a call. But that'll give us a better idea on what the parameters are, what the metrics are for how they're going to be judging applications, the amount of money that's going to be up for grabs, et cetera. But I advise that all agencies start thinking about what HSIP projects they could apply for, what safety projects they wouldn't mind federalizing and using HSIP funding for. We've been really successful over the years in acquiring a good deal of HSIP monies. So we have the track record to show that we can do it. So keep that in mind. And if that's something that you'd like to collaborate with me on, feel free to reach out and we can brainstorm on that and yeah, help flesh anything out. Unless anybody has any questions for me.
I was gonna say, any questions for Gabe? Any additional thoughts, comments to share?
I'm curious, on the HSIP call, what years would they be looking at funding? 'Cause I think
20.
we've had,
Sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
I was just thinking that the last one was through 23 or 24 that we did.
I believe this one is 24, 25.
Okay.
That's a couple of years down the line that I recall.
It's several years down the line, but you know, it comes up before you know it. It's here. So, and since, you know, with these federalized projects, it takes so long to get geared up anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Gabe, this is Jay with ADOT. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Hey, Jay.
Hey, so you got as much current information as I do, so thank you for providing that. I'm pretty sure it's 24, 25. It could be 25, 26. But yeah,
it could be, yeah.
So yeah, I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up, but I do know that a lot of the systemic projects are doing very well because the BC ratios tend to be a lot higher than, say, like a regular project. Not encouraging you one way or the other, but yeah, the BC ratios definitely have a big play into it.
Thanks, Jay. I will encourage you to do the systemic ones because I don't care. I know you can't, Jay, but I can. Yeah, systemic projects perform very well. Hawk projects perform very well. We had a couple lighting projects from the city. The counties has had some success with the sign panel replacements. It's any variety of safety projects are high performers. So again, any questions, reach out to me, shoot me an email or give me a call.
Perfect. Thanks, my friend. Okay, next item up. This has been a standing item we've carried for a while. We actually expanded it at one of our more recent meetings to include all the jurisdictions. And so this is just a simple summary update from all the partner jurisdictions on communications, updates, activities, upgrades, things like that. So Francisco, I know you've primarily given this in the past. So I'll start with you with DTM.
All right. Well, we got all our signals finally connected. We had several signals that were on fiber but did not have the equipment. So we rolled out about 30 network switches that were connected to fiber and connected all those signals. We are 100% communications to our signals, but we're still using a lot of old technology that we need to roll out, and that's our plan to attack next.
Francisco, this is Blake Richards. I'd like to mention something as well, if that's all right, on kind of some of our broader goals that we're looking at. So Francisco can speak to the specifics, but we wanted to share with the group some things we're looking at with COM. As you all know, that's one of the most critical things to having efficient and safely operating signals. So in the city of Tucson, as Francisco mentioned, we have 545 signalized intersections, not including our Hawks. And over the last 2 years, we've been able to achieve 100% communication to those. So we're really proud of that. but it does come at a cost, a significant cost. We're paying Verizon and SmartWave vendors a monthly fee for that service. We're committed to that, but it does cost us over $200,000 a year. That's money that we potentially could use in other ways or to further our comm initiatives, whether it's fiber or other things. So the city has been, looking for opportunities there. And with the pandemic occurring last year, one of the things that we were able to do as a citywide initiative is create a community Wi-Fi program. This was intended to provide internet access for school children or other parts of our community that needed internet access to function and grow and do their things during the pandemic. We have an opportunity now that the city has taken the lead on that and developed that program. We have the opportunity to connect our signals on the same technology, do it at a very low cost, and a minimal or no cost for the monthly fee for us. So there's significant savings there. It's a great step towards our smart cities initiatives and connecting everything that we do, and really has the potential to pay for itself relatively quickly, given the cost savings for our service providers. So we wanted to mention that as something that we're looking at. It's something that goes along with fiber, and we've got some fiber backfill opportunities to help create our backbone and fill this out. But we just kind of wanted to share, some strategy that we're looking at to provide our comm in the city limits, and there is potential beyond the city limits, possibly in the future. So we'll discuss some more of that, but we wanted to bring it up to the group at this forum.
I'll go through all the presentations and then come back on any questions if that's okay with you guys. But Blake, Francisco, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Michelle, Pima County.
Sorry about that. We are 100% connected all through cellular right now.
Connected through what?
The cellular connection.
Oh, okay. 100%
through MyVision. Yeah.
cellular. Cellular. Okay. Cheryl or GJ, what do you got at Noro Valley?
All right, so we currently have 10 of our 22 signals connected, most of them through point-to-point radios to the RTDN, and then we have 4 that are connected cellular through MyVision, and then we're looking at connecting signals along the First Avenue corridor via radio so that we can establish, we want to get coordination along that corridor, but we're waiting for comms to the signals in order to do that so we can maintain a good clock time. And that particular item is in the hands of our IT department. It's not very high on their list of priorities. So we're waiting. That's about it.
Got it. Thank you. Morena, Fausto, what do you got?
Don't quote me on this. I'll have to double check with Dion, but most of our signals are connected either via MaxView or some overlap with MyVision. So of the 29 existing, I think there's only 1 in North Marana that we have yet to connect to the system.
One outstanding. Okay. And lastly, Paul, what do you got going in Sahuarita?
We have 2 of our 18 signals connected via MyVision with the most, alas, low-end product they have, but it does give us basic communications with two of our larger intersections.
Okay. Okay, any questions from any of the other members, committee members, for any of the presentations or any of the stuff that's been shared from the 5 jurisdictions? Hey.
Hey, excuse me. Good morning, Rick. Jay Gomes here with ADOT.
Go for it. What you got?
Not that I asked to be on the agenda, but I guess to add to agenda item 5, there are still several signals on the outskirts of the metro area that are not connected, but we do have plans on connecting them within the next year. I know that all the equipment out for the 86 corridor is purchased. The equipment for the I-10 East corridor is purchased. We're just waiting to get it connected. We still need to get the northern signals on 77, you know, like, I guess it would be like Wilds and Golder and Pinto. They still need to be connected, and the same goes for I-19. We have, I believe, 6 signals down there that we need to get connected. So that one's probably a future project, but so I think that counts about 14 that are not out of the 45. So
okay, Jay, along those lines, would you like me to go ahead and add you in there for a regular progress update on the communications efforts and activities along with the other 5?
I think that would be appropriate, seeing as we're a member of the PAC.
You've got that kind of activity, I'll be glad to do it. Okay.
I'll make sure to have a better update next meeting.
No, I sprung that on you, but thank you for jumping in and piping up on that.
You got it.
Any other questions for the jurisdictions on that, on the communications efforts and activities? Okay, hearing none, moving on to the next item. You recall this is one that's been in the work for quite a while now, I think coming up on a couple of years from when we originally started this. So Gabe and I have done quite a bit of work with the other committee members that have been working that helped out with this. There has been a lot of time, effort, and energy devoted to this. At our April meeting, as you recall, we presented the final draft to everybody, sent that out to the group. We did receive a number of comments on both the signal operations as well as the bike ped safety reports that we had put together on that. I'm pleased to say we were able to go through. We got with subcommittee members. We met with all the commenters, shared the, in some cases we had meetings and discussions with them on the comments that had been received, shared the responses, the evaluation, and made joint reviews on that. I'm happy to say that it was, I think, 99% textual. So there was really no changes in findings as much as it was rephrasing some things, clarifying statements, kind of adding or enhancing key phrases, statements, or conclusions that have been identified. But at this point in time, essentially after we've closed the loop with everybody that commented on that, Gabe and I are prepared to essentially say we've completed this activity. We thank you all for your patience on this. We're sorry we lost a year on COVID. We tried to power through as best as we could. Obviously, it took a big hit on there as our ability to meet, discuss, and review things was greatly hindered on this. So Gabe, anything else you can think of you want to add on top of that?
No, I think I've said all I need to say on it, and I think you covered it pretty well, Rick. Thanks.
Okay, so basically those 2 report efforts are done. If you are interested in getting a copy of one or the other or both, send an email to Gabe and myself. We'll get those off to you and you can use them at your discretion, your disposal. As a reminder, they were simply an evaluation. They were white paper documents that simply did the homework. That's the way I kind of tried to think about it is we did the homework deep dive research to be able to provide factual information or other additional information that would help any of the jurisdictional practitioners be able to evaluate those. These were topics that good, bad, right, or wrong, had been on the hot list a couple of years ago. Probably some of the things have progressed, but there still may be value and benefit to you. So please send an email to both of us. We'll make sure we get those in your hands and they're free for you to use. So appreciate your patience on this. Originally, the goal on that was to have it done within, I think, 9 months, 12 on the outside. We're at 24, but I still think mission accomplished on that. Some pluses to take away and some things we'd do differently, but I appreciate everybody's assistance. Most of all, the committee members that jumped in, volunteered time and effort on that. It really was beneficial and I appreciate it. So send those emails, we'll get those to you and we'll put those in your hands.
Yeah, I'll just echo the thanks to everybody and yeah, so some really stellar effort by some of you to help us out, to help put a bow on it. So it's really much appreciated. Thank you.
Hugely educational. So I know I got a crash course on a lot of these things that knew a little, and I'm fortunate to say I learned a lot on that. I'm hoping it benefits a lot of the others too, because it was a giant aha moment on several items. So thank you guys. Okay, that brings us to the final item. This is the one that is going to now be the traffic signal equipment purchasing. So a little bit of background on this. As you recall, you may or may not recall, I shouldn't say it that way. 2.5 years ago, we went through a very, very similar, if not identical exercise. The TIP had been approved over the summer of 2018. We had an allocation to work with. We as a committee, as we reformed, got up and running because this was a recently approved allocation that fired this program back up. We went through a discussion of how should we break the funding that had been available up and what's the best way to proceed. So as you recall, in late 2018, we had looked at a couple different options and essentially had agreed unanimously that the best overall course of action was essentially to allow the jurisdictions each to prioritize their own individual items, needs, necessities, and opportunities, rather than try to come up with a regional approach. Leave it up to the jurisdictions, stay consistent with the practices protocol and the requirements. And then the funding would be simply prorated based on the number of signals. That was determined to be the fairest, most appropriate way. And everybody agreed to that. So that essentially led to, out of the total signals in the region, a prorated share was then made available, and that methodology carried forward for each fiscal year. We formalized that through IGAs that we scrambled through. Several of you remember helping me out to get those in place during the following months, and it was approved by the board. So we operated under that for the last 2.5 years. Here we are back in almost the same exact situation, where we've got now the recently approved TIP. There was a shift, and this is the difference. The funding changed from RTA excise tax to the federal funds that have been made available to the region, STBG. So that different coloring of money obviously comes with different requirements. Same thing as what it's been through. Like the previous TIP exercises, it went through all the various working committees, all the other appropriate approvals, channels, and culminated with regional council approval of the TIP this past May. And then its finalization over the summer under Carol and Lori's efforts. So essentially we've got now an allocation. We're back to the same boat we were 2.5 years ago. How do we best divvy this money up? How do we best utilize this? And the slight difference on it, because it's federal in nature, that actually requires an MOU. It'll look, taste, and feel the same as an IGA. Don't worry about that. And we'll go to our board with our concurrence on our recommendations. So basically asking them to bless, just like we did last time. We came up with recommendations, formalized them through the IGA, boards approved them. We'll do a similar activity here, navigating the regional council for the approval of the MOUs, but once upon after the board has blessed it. So it's a repeat of the exercise we did 2.5 years ago. So no change. The money available is what's been approved for the whole rest of the program. 1.326 million. That's what we've got available. Okay, that's it. I've asked, I've made numerous requests. Several of us here that have worked on this have, kind of, hey, did anything change? Is this the latest and greatest? And it's been confirmed as of our most recent discussions late yesterday. The money we've got is all we have. So that's what we've got to work with. So what we want to go through with now is identify and come up with a group as the recommendation of the projects and the division, the subdividing, if you were, the sub-allocation of this, that would then go forward to the RTA board for concurrence on this. So I've sent out the packages that all got mailed out well in advance. So everybody's had a chance to read through it. I included a summary sheet I came up with to hopefully aid in your evaluation of the costs. And what I'd like to do with everybody's permission, the protocol I thought that would be best suited is to make sure I track on this properly. Simply start by asking for the materials you read, the information you received. Are there any questions you want to ask to the jurisdiction that submitted on that? I've got a couple of my own I can start with if that helps. So what we'll do is go through with questions first, okay? Just to get clarification, is there anything we need to understand better? Then secondly, we can have more of a discussion, and rather than get into the formal motion, seconding, things like that, I'd rather have a little bit more of an informal conversation about suggested ideas. What would be good? What would work? It was similar to how we did it 2.5 years ago. I went back and looked on notes. We basically engaged in a dialogue first, then landed on what would be the best approach, then codified it through a formal motion and action. So trying to really take the template that worked last time, apply it here, and go through and do it that way if that works for everybody. Okay, hearing nothing, I'm going to jump in with the first couple of questions, but I'll open it up to the floor to others. This applies primarily to, I'll ask in this order if I can. On the city, Francisco, I'm going to ask you, since you were the author of it, there was an additional local contribution that was identified in the amount of $250,000. Are you looking to that to be city provided? And can you share if that's going to be solely out of DTM's finances, or can you have any light you can share on where that 250 would come from?
Yes, that was from funds from DTM.
Solely provided by DTM?
Yes.
Additional funds. Okay. And same question then to Michael Medina, the author of the one from the county. Was the additional funds meant to come from the PC dot coffers? Yes. Okay, same thing. I'd read it a couple different ways is what made me think is, oh, is there another allocation, a grant or something like that? So I wanted to make sure I just got that clarified. Additional funds from PC dot. Okay, those were the two questions I had. So that starts it off. Committee members, any other questions from any of the group prior to starting some of the suggestions, dialogue, and discussion? Any other clarifying questions from anybody? Paul, go ahead. Paul, I'm sorry, Paul Burton.
Yeah, for Pima County, it's like, are you, is the Connect Pima an actual existing application, or is this vaporware?
So the proposal in front of this group is for the county to develop a mobility on demand application along with a mobility as a service component. So ultimately is that, like in many other areas of planning, and specifically I'll use the Connect Houston project, is that they made a huge investment of nearly $20 million in trying to ensure that there are multiple ways of providing mobility along with paying for that element through one uniform paying system. So what we're trying to do here is not only provide that type of capability, but also introduce the TISMO and then the advanced traffic demand component with that. So ultimately is that through this app, we will use the TISMO component and be able to circulate information to the users, regardless if they're using a single occupancy vehicle trip, a transit trip, or any combination. So that would be the ideal component in introducing this type of application. I'm sorry, sir, you're muted.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, Paul, did that answer your question for you? Okay. Okay. Other questions for any of the other authors that prepared and presented proposals?
Rick, Paul Casertano here. I don't have a question for the applicants per se, but I did want to make sure to at least raise the issue of whether or not we're beholden to the original project description or the original project itself, which this group collectively decided that it was traffic signal equipment was the thing that was a common need across all jurisdictions and a good use for the funding. It appears that the criteria broadens that, and I just want to make sure as we transition out of RTA funds into the use of federal funds, just confirming that we're not tied to that equipment description in some way.
So it's an incredibly good point. Let me see if I can navigate it this way. I think this committee has some liberty with this. So to the point Paul's bringing up, the ballot language that this is under is really traffic signal technology. But in reading through the RTA's administrative code, it broadens it out a little bit, and recognizing there has probably been some evolution between when the code was originally drafted, then the RTA ballot measures were pulled together and finalized, and then any kind of back and forth dialogue on tightening that up. From what research I've been able to do, the administrative code is considered the operating Bible of how projects, categories, efforts, programs are all administered. And in that case, it's a little bit more liberal. It's an interpretation. Along the lines of what Paul's talking about, we want to make sure that the intent of improvements in traffic signal technology are maximized. I think that's kind of where this group has traditionally gone, is how can we make the system better, operate better, improve the overall conditions with the intent of what was originally envisioned. And I know that's a lot of squishy language, and I apologize for it because the code is does cover a job of being more specific on that. You're all practitioners. You're the ones dealing with this in the name of the game type of thing. But as I've understood it, and as I've looked into this, as the board makes a final determination on that, they will take into account what this group recommends, but also compare it back against what the code had originally been blessed at the time. Does it match the intent? So I don't know, Paul, if that clarifies that. I guess I'm saying we've got probably the code is the more, if we're consistent with the code, we're on solid standing. If we go tighter than the code, that's our own prerogative, but the board may or may not choose at their discretion, and they have the authority to make that final call as to which way they want to go with that. But I think if we say we've looked at consistent practices, we're consistent with the code, and we're consistent with the intent, we're on solid state footing. That would be my answer. And does that answer your question? And does that get to your point okay?
I think that's really helpful context, certainly. I also wanted to just verify that as this existing tip ID 2415 for traffic signal equipment gets sub-allocated into, say, 4 brand new projects, does it need to stick with that traffic signal equipment scope, or is it the administrative code that is the guide? And it sounds like we believe it's the administrative code that's the guide. It's not really tying to the original project description that is tethering it down.
That's the way I'm reading it. That's the way I've asked it, is does the root base of that item, which is RTA 40, which is that's the overarching one that led to the formation of 2015. And that overarching one is rooted in the administrative code. That's how I read it. That's how I interpret it. And that's how I've researched into it following our discussions. So yes, the title of 20-15 may be more limiting than the base RTA 40 administrative code. Came up with a title under a tip ID, but its base foundation is covered under the administrative code. So I think that's where it gives us the liberty for the choices, and everything came in, was consistent and quoted compliance with that.
Great, thanks.
That's how I've interpreted it, that's how I've read it, and that's how I've cross-verified it with others.
Just to add on, Rick, if I may, to that question, when it does become a tip amendment, will it be a tip amendment that goes to committees, or is it an administrative tip amendment?
We're looking, so I've researched this with Carol and Lori, and I want to make sure I'm saying this right, that when the MOUs and the blessing by the board would do it, then we can do an administrative tip amendment then to make the proper allocations and create those separate sub allocations appropriately. Right now, the tip identifies the money and RTA is the jurisdiction. Obviously, we're not going to be in a position to oversee all this stuff. We want it back in the hands of the jurisdictions, and we would be able to treat that administratively after the board and council take action. Am I saying that correctly, Carolyn?
Yes, Rick, you are.
Okay, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay,
Follow up on that. So this is federal money now. Is that gonna, and I think it's fiscal year 22.
that's correct.
So it needs to be obligated soon. I know that, the city and the county are CA agencies, so we can administer our own projects, but has there been dialogue on if there's time available to get the JPAs in place for ADOT potentially to administer some of these other projects, and also just the clearance timeline required to be ready to obligate in a few months?
Fortunately, these are fairly simple approaches. So there are several components that we've tried to put in place to facilitate that. One of them was just jamming this meeting in as quickly as possible and then hoping to go to the September board and council meetings for the approval there. That gives a respectable amount of time afterwards. Number two, I sent an email to Mark Hennig at ADOT LPA, local public agency section, alerting him to what we're going to be doing, so that Mark is aware that we're possibly going to be bringing in some typical or non-typical capital projects that are going to be utilizing federal funds, so that he's got a heads up on that. We have also, during the discussions with some of the proposals and the authors, tried to make sure we keep as much flexibility as possible. So if there is going to be a need for sole source efforts or activities, then we're going to need to jump on PIFs, public interest findings. That's the sole source justification documents, so that we can work with ADOT to get those prepared timely. So we've taken initial steps. We didn't want to jump the gun and take away any of the authority of this committee or the board by actually submitting or actually proposing, but we wanted to lay groundwork so that if there were a hurdle or a headache, we would be aware of it. So I think we've done as much as we can reasonably do and have not been encountering anything that would come back that would jeopardize that. So far, that's been the efforts we've done. The normal time frame for a federal authorization, soft date request is usually in the March, April. That's ADOT's preference, is the sooner the better on that. Typically, from past experience, it's more May is their hard cutoff. So we'd have to make sure authorization requests have to be into them by May. And we think we've allowed enough time for that. Along those lines, the money doesn't have to be spent all that time frame, although several of you indicated you would, because they'd be upfront bulk purchases. So there is time to spend it over the course of the rest of the program, but the initial authorization has to be done by fiscal year 22, which is ADOT's request, is that typical March, April, May timeframe. So
this issue begs the question. It begs the question of whether the RTA or the ADOT administrative fees are incorporated into the costs for the project proposals for the non-CA agencies. I know we had run into that in the past with HSIP projects, where ADOT fees were not incorporated into the original estimate, and then there needed to be some painful adjustments made. So I guess that might be a question to pose to the applicants as well.
That's going to have to be something each jurisdiction. So whatever successful proposals come out of this group, that's going to probably be legwork that needs to be done. I reached out to different groups and didn't get the most concrete definitive answer. Several of these deal with straight up equipment purchases. So they're very simple and straightforward. The administrative fee typically applies when you've got a lot more activity in reviewing design documents, tech doc clearances, and NEPA documents. In several of these, we expect that will be negligible if non-existent because they're going to be non-ground disturbing type of activities. So it kind of puts it into a different category as far as what that's going to involve. So there's probably, and that was how far down that path can we go without actually a presentation, a proposal, or circumventing what this committee or the board would be doing. So I didn't get great answers on this is what you'll need, but I didn't get anything saying absolutely hell no, don't even ask, or here's a minimum cutoff, don't even bother us for less than that. So there's practices, but there are some gray areas that are open for discussion, and we're choosing to use that liberty at our disposal. Robin?
Yeah, sorry, my actual hands up here doesn't work. Just as a helpful side note, when we, in a previous iteration of federal funding to purchase equipment, went through this exercise with ADOT, we had some difficulties with the installation portion of it, that even though we were buying the equipment, they wanted to ensure that we had federal constraints in place, even though we were trying to install the equipment ourselves. So just be aware that that could be a tricky bit in buying equipment.
Along those lines, as we go forward, we can certainly help navigate those with questions because a lot of it depends on what you're seeking reimbursement for. So if you're just going to get reimbursement on the equipment, they may view that differently than if you're going to be expecting reimbursement on any crews to install it, contractors, things like that. So a lot of this comes into play as to where exactly the federal funds will be played, to Robin's point. And that'll be critical for the discussions as we go forward. So Paul C. and Catherine, did that get to the points you brought up, and did that answer the questions you were asking about?
Yes.
You good? Paul C., are you good too?
Yeah, my only issue is whether or not there needs to be any adjustment to any of the project costs. I don't want to try to squeeze in as many projects in the available funding just to come back to realize we should or have to put in another $15,000 or $20,000 for ADOT to administer any projects. And then is that going to be put on the jurisdiction? If they can't come up with it, what then happens to the funding that would be released because the project can't move forward? So those are just complicated details that.
And that's a good point, that hopefully all the proposals and the authors of the proposals are aware that, you know, there's still some gray area to work through, cost splits, cost allocations, fees that may or may not be charged. Be aware of those. Calculating out to the nearest penny doesn't mean that's how it's going to go exactly. Long history on that. Paul's point is just a good caution, word of warning. Yeah, don't write the check for that amount just yet, and don't set that aside in your budget to the nearest penny that way, because there may or may not be additional ones that just have to be covered through that effort.
And Rick, I don't know if you can see, Blake's got his hand up. I can see it on the Zoom interface.
I didn't see, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Rick. Yeah, I just wanted to note that as far as the city's submission, that was the understanding that it would be federally eligible equipment purchases. And we do have additional, we included fiber backfill in support of our communications efforts that we previously discussed, but we do have 26 fiber switches, 59 cabinets left to do across the city, and some true signal equipment needs. So just wanted to mention that and what the understanding was for Francisco's submission.
Yep. Okay, no, thank you. Yeah, for those of you that haven't played the federal pool, it's not insurmountable. It just requires good knowledge of what's there. But as Catherine mentioned, both the county and city are CA, so they've played in this pool an awful lot. There is familiarity. Paul and I have done this quite a bit on this end, so there's good familiarity across our end as well. We can help. And as I said, I tried to give a heads up to the ADOT LPA section. So as we navigate this, whatever comes out of this, I think we've got resource assistance to be able to at least broach the discussion to make sure we're doing this most effectively and efficiently. So. Other questions?
I have another quick question.
Shoot.
Rick.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go for it.
So I heard you say that this is going to be the last allocation of category 40 money / STP. for
At
category
that point,
40.
because it carried all the way through the tip, which concluded with the 20, I went 22 through 26, which is the end of the RTA collection period. So that's how I've
So
understood
do
it,
we
yes.
have a accounting of how close to the 15 million of the ballot we actually spent on this category or are forecasting to spend?
I do not have any of that in front of me or available or handy. I would have to do some looking into that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just because this calls for less than 10% of the total allocation of the plan and it's 25% of the time period of RTA. So
And I do
they're not very well
remember,
aligned.
yeah, I do remember the categoricals took a hit with the adoption by the regional council. What was it, 4 or 5 years ago? When there was kind of a general recognition that the projected revenues were going to fall short. And I believe several of the categoricals were tasked with reducing their goal amount. 20% roughly sticks out in my mind. So when I was heading up the wildlife linkage, we were given revised totals. I assume several of the other categoricals went through that. So
Yeah, this
I'd
was
have to-
frozen some time ago. And as noted by the tip ID, which is 2415, that this original project was the last vestiges of what was expected out of the program for a good long while to come. So the committee tried to make it as useful as possible to all.
So I can't predict going forward. I can tell you the funds available is all we've been given right this second. The next 4 years will unfold as they go. But yeah, plan on right now this being the amount and how it lines up. I'll have to look. Let me make a couple notes here, guys. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. If not, for any kind of formal motions, are there any suggestions on the table? Does anyone want to throw something out there and see what sticks? Start the discussion with some suggestions, ideas, thoughts, before we get into formalizing it with any formal motions. How we did it 2.5 years ago, I thought it was a productive method of having the discussion and getting through kind of the point counterpoints and the trade-offs.
Rick, I guess I have one more question. If someone that's not self-certified is given a project and they're not able to get someone to administer it for them, what happens to that funding?
So if I understand it correctly, and Carolyn or Nathan jump in by all means if I slaughter this, but if there's, at the time that next spring rolls around, if there's an allocation of federal funds that hasn't been spent, then the top priority remains to keep the funds in the region. And at that time, we started discussion with the other regional partners to identify, is there a partner that can pick up those funds? I think possibly in the past, there's been swapping that can occur that would allow those funds to stay in the region, be utilized, not lose them out of the region, but still somehow allow jurisdictions to make some arrangements to go forward. So the goal is to keep them in the region. The goal is to try and help the jurisdiction through other sources. I know that's happened in the past. I don't know all the mechanics. I've not been part of all those. But the primary goal would be not to lose those funds out of the region. So if there's another opportunity that can be found and assisted with, that's the goal. Does that answer your question? And Carol,
Yeah, a little
go
bit
ahead,
more. Would it favor, giving more funding to the already approved projects, or would it look at new projects?
typically when we get that late in the game, you've got to look at stuff that's already in the hopper. because a brand new project that's got to then try to go through any kind of clearances, approvals, anything like that, faces an extreme challenge come the next springtime. So typically you have to be pretty close to being ready and saying, yeah, I can take an extra bit, not a problem, that'll help me out. So usually you want to be 95% close to the field goal or the goal line, pick your cliche, and ready to go and able to absorb that without starting a new effort. That late in the game, that's traditionally what makes a good candidate versus a poor candidate.
Thank you.
That would include all projects, Cheryl. It
Yeah,
would
that's typical across
include the
all
Category
federal
40
allocations.
stuff. It would look at everything that can absorb federal funding, everything and anything that can absorb federal funding.
We run into that on the capital side. If a permit delays a project, there sometimes has to be one, okay, somebody else takes the allocation this year, we'll swap it with the allocation for next year and you can adjust. So there's an exercise, effort, and a focus to keep the money in the region. As a backbone in there, there's always ADOT as a very effective partner in helping us with that in the past.
And Rick, I just got an update. We've spent 6.89 million of the $15 million of RTA funds in Category 40.
Spent to date?
It was frozen, 6.89.
Thank you for finding that.
I'll go ahead and jump in with a suggestion.
Was that Blake? Okay.
Yes. I would suggest that we continue to use the number of signals as a way to determine the funding split.
Can I ask a question on that? With federal funds, are we allowed to use some sort of prorating measure? I know that there's typically challenges to that when we try to do that with the greater vision of STP funds. We can't do it based on population or roadway miles. There have to be other eligibility factors. So I'm just wondering if we can use that as a metric for this funding now that it's federal.
And I wonder, I mean, just to jump on that, if we do it that way, if we decide as a group that's the best way to do it, then would we perhaps need to split this into more than one project in the TIP as an administrative amendment to ensure that we had separate owners of the different funding sources?
Yeah, I guess I had assumed that was the next step with this anyways, that it would have to be split into whatever projects were broken out, because I don't know how else we get separate authorizations from the feds on it.
No,
Right,
yeah.
that's why I popped it in there.
So let me make sure I'm tracking. Let me ask the second part. Everybody would get same thing as what we've got now. Everybody gets a little piece of the pie. That's your proposal, Blake?
Yes.
So keep the same exact way we've got now, dismiss the proposals, and then everybody gets a piece of the pie. So to answer that, then we'd have to have whatever that turned out to be, I think six or seven allocated amounts, and then a various small amounts. That means every jurisdiction will have 7 MOUs, will have 7 TIP projects, and every jurisdiction has to figure out how they're going to move forward with doing that before spring.
Well, or we could also decide that some of these could be handled by the CA agencies. If Oro Valley has a very small amount they want, then, you know, we could maybe administer, county could administer, those kinds of things could split it up differently. I was just thinking in jurisdiction, right?
So Blake, I'm going to go back to make sure I understand. Your suggestion is basically we keep what we've got now. It's the jurisdiction's call, and they get the allocation based on what they've got.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess let me just follow up on that concept, is that understanding that this is federal money. I guess the first question I have is that for all these improvements that at the intersection level, how many of these are under the federal functional classification system? make that, clarity right now? Or if there's equipment that's being purchased that would be utilized off system, if you will, how is there a component in this decision-making that would guarantee that it still upholds regional significance as defined by the federal government?
Michael, do you mind asking? I don't think I followed that very well. Can you ask that again?
So these are federal funds that we're talking about?
Correct.
And as I understand it, there's a proposal to use a previous allocation based on the amount of signals.
Correct.
All right. And so if that's the case, I think moving forward, how do you identify those intersections are under federal functional classification as a function of the roadway?
I don't think we're limited to the federal functional classification of the roadway to use these funds. I think federal funds can be used as long as it meets their general eligibility requirements. So I don't think it's going to be limited to NHS system or interstate or state highway system or anything else that would be considered of their importance. Does that answer your question?
So the roadways that are in your model, so I guess what I'm trying to figure out, how is the tiering system for this process? I mean, I'm not opposed to any of the projects that are being proposed. I think we just want to make sure that moving forward, that there's some level of consistency of how the decision making is being made.
So just to add what little I know about how ADOT and FHWA applies the funding, as long as it's traffic signal systems, the individual location of a piece of equipment does not have to be on system.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You said it better than I did. Thank you.
I guess for clarification.
Pretty sure the entire set of signalized intersections are on the federal aid network, if that is a helpful nexus of sorts.
Yeah, I think if that nexus is there, certainly, that recommendation moving forward. But I think in terms of region significance, how is there a cluster of projects can still fulfill that? And I do understand if the ones that are being proposed per se, if there's a strategic component of ensuring everybody gets a piece of the pie, is there a reduction to these projects in terms of the amounts that they were submitted for? So in other words, is that if there's a willingness of this body for everybody to win, if you will, with respect to their nomination, and we scale back on the amount of the projects, I think that's also something that's valid.
I think Mr. Burton had his hand up too, Rick. I'm not sure.
Oh, dang. I thank you for watching for that. I'm trying to process all this as we
I
go.
saw it and then it just disappeared.
No, I still have a question here. Is in terms of like dividing up the money based on number of signals or population or anything like that, can we even do that? I kind of understood from Dave Atler that like exceeds our brief. Can anybody speak to that?
This is Nathan Barrett from PAG. I want to read the relevant verbiage from federal statutes. This is 23 CFR section 450.326 paragraph M. This is the advantage of doing these meetings from my office. I can look these things up while we're discussing. Procedures or agreements that distribute sub-allocated surface transportation program funds to individual jurisdictions or modes within the MPA by predetermined percentages or formulas are inconsistent with the legislative provisions that require the MPO, in cooperation with the state and the public transportation operator, to develop a prioritized and financially constrained TIP, and shall not be used unless they can be clearly shown to be based on considerations required to be addressed as part of the metropolitan transportation planning process. My gut reaction, without doing further research on this, is if this remains a single TIP ID, it's a package project, and I think we can then choose what projects are in that package by whatever method we deem necessary. But if we split this up into individual tip IDs, we could get into a much grayer area. Now, having said that, I repeat, that's my interpretation of this. I would have to check with Mark Hoffman at ADOT or others, but that's the relevant verbiage and my interpretation of it.
So Nathan, along those lines, because this is tap dancing on Catherine's question, is if this group basically on behalf of the region establishes a prioritization is a distribution based on a prorated, which is not a pre-existing percentage. It turns out we've used that method before, and I'm picking on some very, very not clean distinctions, but in my mind, they're differences. The intent is to break them up so that RTA is not the administrating entity. Each jurisdiction then is able to move forward. We create the separate projects for whatever approval comes out of this group or the board ultimately. But if we say that our prioritization methodology was based on ABC calculations, does that comply with what you read? Or do you have to ask Mark on that one?
Yeah, I'd hate to give a definitive answer right here, right now, without consulting with Mark Hoffman. There is obviously exceptions in that verbiage, unless they can be clearly shown to be based on considerations required to be addressed as part of the metropolitan transportation planning process. Such considerations that need to be addressed do include, safety considerations, congestion management considerations. So there is some wiggle room in complying with that, but what that wiggle room is, I'm not going to know until I consult with ADOT a little bit closer.
Yeah, so it sounds like then, because that was the point you were asking about, Catherine, is can we take just a formulaic driven methodology? And to me, I'm hinging on the word pre-existing. We can say that, we've used our latest and greatest signal calculations and we would divide it up differently. So it's not necessarily pre-existing formula driven, but I realize I'm on pretty shaky ground with that argument. So I think to Blake's suggestion of using the methodology we had before, Blake, I think that would probably need some verification from ADOT that that method would work and that approach could be used. And we'd have to probably justify how we're doing it. That's how I'm taking Nathan's addition or Nathan's clarification on that particular aspect of it. We'd have some work to do to make the argument that we want to use a proration approach and see if we could justify it.
I'm not opposed to it.
I guess let me just ask is that, just for the spirit of moving, this committee forward and selecting projects, how would you all normally, if you will, to ensure that there's consistency with the federal program in development of a criteria for assessing these projects so that we can move, through that in the potential future meeting if needed?
Well, so the methodology we came up with last time wasn't encumbered with federal, and it was a much more easily navigable type of thing than a prioritization basis, I guess is what you're asking. And that's a valid suggestion, is that to stay compliant with the federal aspect of this and coming up with a prioritization based approach, we could attempt it. I think it would take some work. And that means we'd probably have to jam in another meeting quickly because we still have the goal of trying to get before the board in September because of the time frame requirement on this.
Right. So understanding that there's some deadlines that the body wants to, that this body wants to present to the decision makers. So just going back to what was expressed earlier is that if we truly feel that all these projects are meeting the federal requirement in terms of regional significance and anything else that's tied to the rules, and if the subcommittee is willing to scale back on some of the amounts that every agency is asking for under this call, I believe it's 1.3, give or take. So is there a willingness of this body to examine those projects to see how close we can get to still the 1.3 million and still preserving projects? Or is the approach for us to come back and look at some type of prioritization for these projects?
So that's a question. And Michael, I'm going to pick on yours first if I understand all this right. Your total price tag was 2 mil, with 1,326 being the federal component, and then you had the match and the overmatch. Would you be looking to scale back the $2 million price tag and then thus drop the federal allocation, or keep the $2 million price tag and up the county's overmatch contribution?
So I think we can go either way. The question here is that I know that there's other agencies that also nominated projects that there could be 2 or 3 tied to the agencies.
Yep.
So the question is that of those, which are the most, in terms of priority for them? And then I think if we understand that every body would have at least one project moving forward, then we can start to scale back so that we have the 1.3 million that is equally, if you will, distributed to the entire region.
Okay, so I see them as two approaches, but Michael, make sure I'm saying this the right way for what you intend. So one approach is everybody voluntarily reevaluate, and we can do it here or we can do it after this, but if we get another meeting, we are going to have to jam this in quickly. So, but we essentially take a look at what you've got and decide, maybe you put in 3 projects, maybe you put in 2, maybe you've got a better overmatch you can add, reduce the amount requested with the intent to try and say everybody keeps a piece of the pie. So every project would be funded to some degree, and either if it's scaled back or a project's taken off the table, but every jurisdiction that put in for something gets something. Correct? That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Because the counter approach, I should say counter, the variation on that would be this group then has to look at and come up with a neutral and objective prioritization methodology, matrix, or an evaluation criteria, or something like that, and then run those through it. If you remember, those of you that went through this 2.5 years ago, we dodged that bullet by simply saying the prorated share was a much more manageable, navigable, and easier to administer. So it's not to say we couldn't come back and try it again, but that would require then we've got to come up with agreed upon criteria to which now all these compare against. And that may mean 1, 2, whatever, may mean less that get funded because of the prioritization methodology we would compare against. So there's a kind of a couple of alternate methods there on the table as well, or alternate suggestions. In keeping with the spirit from 2.5 years ago, this committee highly, highly valued everybody that wants a little pie gets a little pie. So we go back to Michael's first suggestion, which is, can the authors of the proposals evaluate what was proposed and either increase the overmatch and reduce the federal need, or scale back the proposal so that there's less federal money needed, and therefore all the proposals could get a chance, or even pull back if there were multiple out of a jurisdiction, withdraw one from consideration. That would meet, I guess, with what the intent we were trying to do back then was. Everybody that wants to be in the game gets in the game. Would those that proposed be open to that discussion? You don't have to necessarily do it today if we request, if we need additional time, but is that a more favorable approach than trying to come back with a objective regional criterias that we would have to compare against?
Rick, this is Blake Richards again, and that sounds reasonable to ensure that everybody gets some piece of the pie. I don't think we need to get caught up and wrap too up around getting it exactly proportional or what the metrics will be. If we can come to some some agreement and, you know, some proportion that makes sense. But I don't think we need to tie it, you know, get wrapped up on that too much if we can bring some proposals back.
Basically go back, reevaluate and see if we can come back closer to budget. I say that back to you, okay? And is that, Michael, is that where you were going with it? Basically scale it back. Can we come in somehow, some way at 1.326 million?
As part of that reevaluation, now that I look at our proposal, I don't know what the, you know, administration fee is going to be. Obviously, we're just buying licenses, so it's not really.
God, I would
Still,
hope
if
they
you're
would
adding
not
a,
gouge you.
you were hoping, but if we're adding a 5,000 to 10,000 to this, so I guess as part of this, we might actually come back, reevaluate, and increase that fund a little bit.
I think that would be a reasonable, in the meantime, if that's the desired way, then we can now go further with LPA and ask if they can give a better indicator on what the fees would be. Catherine, do you know what ADOT's charging these days on typical capital project? Not the big ones.
On our small ones, it's 10,000.
Still 10,000, okay. So typically, and it's been in place for several years now, a larger, not a giant road reconstruction, but I'm talking a typical $1 million safe routes to school enhancement type project, typically has about a $10,000 processing fee with that. And that covers all the administrative reviews, NEPA efforts, everything. So I would agree, an equipment purchase should be a tiny fraction of that. I can't imagine they would do it for free, but I would hope it would not be 3.5, anything like that.
Can I ask a question on that
Shoot,
too?
go
Is
for it.
there any flexibility? Because the benefit to the region at large, when we add $10,000 to $25,000 project, you're not getting as much for your money as if that 25,000 was RTA and we just spent it straight away. So is there any flexibility in the RTA budgets to make these smaller projects non-federalized? Okay.
No, and to your point, Catherine, that's been asked, and I have been given multiple opportunities to politely, respectfully, and professionally ask that question a number of times. And the situation we've got is the situation we've got. So, yeah, it went through the full process with all those discussions and survived. So this is the hand we've been dealt.
Just to be clear, that went through the discussions at the staff level rather than at a committee level.
As far as I know, this entire proposal carried forward in the TIP through all the committee discussions, through all the TIP efforts, the outreach. It survived the entire time. We have an approved TIP with this. However, all the reviews went through. It still carried and survived all that. I was not part of all those, but I also, the ones I sat in on, never saw it come up for discussion. So the latest, so the suggestion right now, you heard Blake kind of concur that Michael's proposal of we reevaluate, do a little more research, possibly scale, likely scale back. We aim to get the proposals within the 1.326 million. Is there anybody opposed to that strategy?
Well, you know, I'd also like to ask if small agencies didn't put in an application, is that implying that you don't want to mess with federal funds? Should your portion that we might guide the trying to squeeze all these projects in with the per signal portion, are you just wanting to just put that back in the pool, or do you want a small scale allocation of federal dollars still?
So Paul, my understanding was that in order to submit, we had to show already that we would be able to have someone administer the project for us. And there was no way for us to do that at that time, so we did not submit. Because we would have had to do probably a PIP and the MOU, and there was not enough time to be able to make sure that that could happen before the submittal.
And if the allocation per signal is used as kind of a framework to guide the scale of each agency's federal allocation, is a $30,000 allocation of federal funds worth it for you to do what you need to do, or is that just like not really? Because it would kind of be in that range if you look at how it was done before, and if that is the guiding model moving forward to try to give everyone a little piece.
Definitely we can use any funds that you're willing to give to us, you know, big, small, whatever. We can go, you know, battery backups, we can go, you know, small pieces of equipment for intersections, things like that. We can always spend it.
Okay.
Paul has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Paul, go ahead. Paul Burton.
So my real only concern with doing it, with basing this on the number of signals, is I think ADOT actually has the fewest signals in the area. And I could be wrong about that, but it seems to me that they do. And looking at Jay's first ask there, the 5 new traffic signal cabinets along I-10, I've actually seen those cabinets. I think it's really, really important that he get that hardware. And, you know, looking at Marana, I mean, Dion doesn't really have very much to give up. She needs some licenses for MaxView. So how is it proposed we deal with that?
Hey, Paul, thanks.
What's been the practice for MaxView licenses in the past? Is that the responsibility of the jurisdictions, or?
So to your question, Paul, I mean, this intent was to solicit suggested projects that had no basis of limiting. It was a needs-based approach. Thus, you see what came in was not, I don't believe anybody used a starting point as the previous allocation from before. So I think that was kind of tossed aside or, you know, left in the past. And then, okay, here's our top needs. Here's a suitable category, suitable need that fell within the 1.326 mil allocation. So to the validity of it and the numbers, I mean, I don't think there's a correlation between the amount and the number of signals. If that answers your question or your statement, I guess.
It kind of did, and looks like Jay Gomes has something he wants to add here.
Okay, Jay, go for it.
Hey, thanks, guys. Make sure you can hear me okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I kind of followed the same approach we had before, assuming that, you know, obviously there's 6 or 7 partners in the PAG, and knowing that, you know, I don't know, maybe you could consider me the big elephant in the room with big bags of money in my hands, but I don't have any money in my hands. But yeah, that's why I asked for just a smaller project, assuming that if we were to try to dole out the 1.3 in kind of a fashion that we had before, I only asked for the smaller projects. And again, to Paul Burton's, you know, point, I mean, that's what we tried to do. I wasn't sure if we should have asked for something different, or, you know, basically in my mind, it seemed like the group would need to get together to try to prioritize something before selecting projects to be programmed anyway. So that's just my 2 cents. And then as far as administrative costs with ADOT, you definitely got to get that from Mark. I think it definitely depends on the amount of work that needs to be done, right? If it's simply, you know, stamping it through, you know, getting Mark Hoffman's blessing and then Mark Hennig's blessing, and then, I mean, it shouldn't cost much, you know, but when you start talking about needing to get clearances and things like that, and needing to have a PM on board, you know, you start talking some substantial administrative fees. And I'm not sure, to be honest, I've never talked to the city or the county on how they actually do that, if they've ever done that for the other local agencies. So that's kind of an interesting question.
Okay. I mean, we got two, and I guess Jay kind of weighed in, and if I read or heard you right, Jay, it sounds like you're probably more of an advocate for a regional prioritization approach rather than everybody trying to scale back. And being the proposals we got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 proposals that came in across five authors, 5 jurisdictions. You know, I'm looking to see if there's an overwhelming favor for going one path versus the other, because they're two radically different efforts. The proposals, the authors would have to evaluate their own funding within their own organization. How much can they pick up and what can they lower? That's going to be a radically different effort than this committee trying to identify a prioritization. We'd probably want just a few volunteers rather than trying to do the whole committee. Have to have a dialogue and bring it back and review it and then get it back blessed in everybody and then apply it. So we'd have our work cut out for us on that for a regional prioritization that we would then compare these proposals against. Not to say it can't be done, but time's of the essence.
Rick, I would hope that we could discuss this as a committee and be able to look at the projects if we had questions about them, you know, ask the jurisdictions about them as far as, like Paul Burton said, you know, what is the need for the actual thing? How much is it going to help the jurisdiction? And then, you know, maybe we take some of the projects off the list or something before we go and look at different cost submittals.
Okay.
That sounds to me.
It's supposed to be needs based. So if we could just ask, you know, the jurisdictions what their need is and kind of look at it that way. How's it going to help, you know, overall for them, and how's it going to improve the region?
So folks, we're at 11:15. What we can do, we can go a couple ways. We can keep with this dialogue if folks can stay on and try to power through and see if we can get a closer discussion and see if things are either going to be shrunk down, removed from consideration, or pulled back. Or we could look to set up a meeting in a couple of weeks, come back and have that discussion and devote the time and effort for that. What do I got for availability? Is there anybody that's got to leave now? Anybody we're in danger of losing? Or can we devote a little time to Cheryl's suggestion? Okay, hearing nobody's got to bail. So Cheryl, what would you start? So you're saying the 8 proposals we have on the table, you want to ask how valuable they are, how important they are, how needed they are. How would you lead that topic off and start?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, have the jurisdiction say how important it is to their operation, you know.
Okay, I tried to go alphabetically on this summary list, so I'm going to look at the latest and greatest that I sent out on the 9th. So Jay, you're up first. Your 5
All right.
signal cabinets and then the 3 miles of fiber. So I'm going to treat them all individually. Go ahead.
Thanks, Rick. And thanks, Cheryl, putting me on the spot. No problem there. So again, like I was saying before, I mean, it was basically, we have identified needs within the region for equipment. And so in my mind, if I were to pick a priority project, it would be the equipment, you know, the signal cabinets and controllers, because they are some of the older ones, not only in the PAG region, but the southern region for ADOT. As far as the 3 miles of fiber on 77, that was just more of an opportunistic project to put together, because currently our current construction project on 77 is installing an empty conduit, and I was just looking to fill it. But we do have working communications up there, so that's maybe not necessarily a high priority for the region itself. So I don't want to kick one of my own projects out, but I figure I want to be, you know, understanding the other needs within the region.
Okay,
and
fair enough.
I guess Before I move on, Rick, I had a small question. I was wondering, because it seems like a lot of the stuff that we have on here, especially for the smaller jurisdictions or percentages, if you will, would there be a way to have, one agency have a project that procures all the equipment, and then through, say, like an MOU, that CA agency would then just dole out that equipment to the local jurisdictions? Is that possible? Does that break Fed rules in any way?
I think it's possible, but it's a logistic nightmare because you're going to have an IGR agreement between the two jurisdictions. So whoever orders it's going to have to order on the behalf, then have some way of transferring that asset, and that financial asset has to be exchanged through an IGA agreement of some sort. So I think it's doable, but I don't know that it simplifies anything as opposed to the methodology we're looking to try now.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's one I'd kicked around. I looked at it about 2.5 years ago and found it didn't really save us anything time-wise. Good question. Okay, Fausto, you're up. Marana, how does the MaxView licenses your needs on this?
Well, first, thanks, Jay. You beat me to it. I was going to ask if like an agency took lead, if that would simplify anything. So our organization, I misspoke earlier, there was actually 4 signals that are not currently communicating or connecting, but this would place MaxView on all our existing signals. We do have a little bit of duplication with someone with MileVision, but the intent of this was to get all of our signals connected on the MaxView system. But as Dion wrote, we currently have 29 signals. However, there's 5 currently, 1 just kicked off construction. Anyways, tied to development and or CIP, we will have 5 more brought online within the coming year. And that's not taking into consideration that we have considerable speculation of some major developments that are going to occur both east and west of I-10. So we just felt that this would basically get us to the point where we would be in an adequate place given what we have coming on the horizon.
All right. All righty, Michael, you're up.
Sure. So I think one of the things that when we looked at this call is that we wanted to provide a service to the region that would provide many benefits. So if you all look at the benefits that we talked about, is that there's a variation, a couple of things. But let me just make it very simplistic, is that we are introducing new technology and new capacity for the area to not only, understand, traffic patterns, but also is to start looking at a new data source for all this. So whether we're looking at a multimodal approach or we're trying to solve something at the corridor level, this mobility on demand and of course the mobility as a service, it will integrate all these coordinated efforts that we have. Now, let me just expand on that, is that aside from us having the capability to communicate with not only the traveling public, but it also serves a purpose as a warning system, if you will, whether it's a road closure, whether it's weather road related. And just to add a little bit more from an economic perspective is that what it will provide is wayfinding. So one of the things that we will be able to solve that I have not seen in other areas that have deployed this type of technology is really solving that first and last mile component. So again, is that in terms of the regional significance, this is one tool that will certainly provide everybody, irregardless of where you're at in the county, will provide this service.
So more of an opportunistic, next level opportunistic type of thing, correct?
But what I would say is that we're, again, introducing new technology, as part of the TISVO and the active demand management elements that, ITS is a functionality of.
Better phrase, thank you. Okay, Paul, the 3 up for you, sorry, Paul B, Sarita, you're 3.
Okay, I think mine are pretty straightforward, and I'll be honest, I can probably prioritize them for you right now. The first would be the portable message boards, which the intent would be to leave them in place as semi-permanent VMS boards. which they're actually kind of important because I'm sure as Jay can tell you, wrecks on the 19 going across the PO Nation are pretty common, and traffic ends up routed through town very often. And deploying detour signs takes essentially our entire streets crew several hours. And so it would be really nice to be able to just turn these on and direct traffic when it has to exit at Duval Mine Road and not get back on until, I don't know, the 10. That's really important. And also we've had several flood events here in the past month that have left us with road closures that we would like to be able to publicize a little better. The second most important one obviously would be the emergency vehicle preemption systems. I would like to move our ambulances and fire vehicles or emergency vehicles through town a little more efficiently. And you know that I would love to have communications with all my signals, but if I have to give that up to be sure that Jay gets the cabinets that he desperately needs up there, I would be willing to do that.
Okay. All righty, and last, Francisco, Tucson, the 10 miles of fiber.
Well, I think we would be willing to scale back our project to give capacity for other projects to be in. We wouldn't do all of our and fill in all of our conduit, but still add some fiber that's going to be helpful for deployment of connected vehicles and IoT things in the future, plus providing communications to our signals to provide progression and monitoring. So I think we're willing to bring down that number to allow for some of these other projects to move forward.
Francisco, can you please describe to the group the corridors we selected?
These are along Houghton on the north side, Speedway. This is Camino Seca to Houghton. Speedway and Broadway would be infilled, in Harrison and Houghton. So that northeast corner in the city of Tucson, and also a little bit on the south side of Cole, along the intersections in front of the Amazon building. Those are the locations that we're looking to deploy fiber.
I had Broadway, Euclid to Country Club as top on our list as well. Did you mention that one?
Nope, I forgot about Broadway. Yeah, you're right.
And so I'll add some of the benefits for the region related to that is, you know, the city has $55 million easily in need for traffic signal equipment. So this is it's a small piece, but it's a very important piece. We also have our adaptive signal program, you know, including similar to the county with TSMO and active travel demand management initiatives. The preemption need, we've got that across the city, just on a, you know, a lot of these things on a larger scale. So just a little perspective there. We'd really like to use the funding for the COM as what we selected specifically in spite of all the rest of our needs, because that funding is uncertain. We really would like to get off of the SmartWave and other vendors. It's costing us a lot of money every year, and something that we can, you know, we've got the great opportunity to lead into the future as a smart city and a smart region with our community Wi-Fi. We're seeking those opportunities, but these corridors are areas where we have a great benefit for the minimal cost. The conduit's there. These are on major corridors. These are places where we need a backbone of fiber. And for minimal cost, we can get that and run that through. So we see that, you know, Houghton, Speedway, Broadway, Swan, Cole, these are regional corridors, and that's where that nexus is for us. In addition to what Francisco mentioned, you know, I think it makes sense for us to, given this pot of money in this group, make sure that everybody that wants to and has a regionally significant project has the opportunity to do that, and we can scale back our need. I would imagine a couple of those corridors can come off, and we do have those prioritized from our perspective, at least. So, you know, that's kind of where we're at as far as the regional significance, and the reason we chose that specifically, in spite of our 55 million and additional initiatives and things like that.
Okay. Based on some quick math I did, and I pray I got this right, I should have brought a calculator. If ADOT scales back their fiber and stays with the 5 new signals, Marana keeps their full allocation. Sahuarita scales back and removes the connections and just sticks with the portable message and the emergency preempt. It's about $300,000. So basically it leaves $1 million on the table for the county and Tucson. Could you guys split that $500,000 each and do something with that? I'm using some big math here, so I'm not getting to the nearest dollar. But that would, we peel back on everybody, and that gets us to our 1.326.
I think we're doing similar quick math, Rick, on both sides. And I saw that, we were starting to see the same as you there, Marana at 25, 5, Sahuarita at 135, ADOT at 108. Definitely things that we are supportive of. We know those cabinets very well, and we'd love to get them funded. So our quick math, we were looking at the $700K range, maybe, that we could dial ours back to. We could talk about that further, or that would require others to resubmit or adjust as well, but we're willing to have that conversation, certainly.
Other thoughts? Because what I'm hearing swirl around, and let me see if I can summarize this. So the way I would look at this, based on the flavor of the discussion, is that the 5 jurisdictions that submitted would go back, reevaluate, and scale back to get to the 1.326 number of federal. Not total, but the federal. And I'm running off big numbers here. And then we would come back at a future meeting, not much more than probably a couple weeks down the line is what I'm thinking, to then formally capture that with a formal proposal and recommendation to the board. So I guess that's the proposal I'm throwing on the table. And I think it's going to have to be the county and the city with the 2 bigger proposals. Can you scale that back, or can you look to scale that back to allow 1 for ADOT, looks like the 1 for Marana, and then the 2 smaller ones for Sahuarita, and then you guys scale back and split the difference. That's how my math is looking. I guess I'm throwing that out there on the table as a suggestion, that we would then come back, and I can look at schedules and calendars in probably a couple weeks and continue this discussion with those second set of eyes, second look at, and bring it back. And if there's any tightening up that needs to be done on those numbers that survive, we could do that in the meantime as well.
I would say we, as the county, we can look at how we can scale it. I don't think Michael or I are ready to make a determination of what the appropriate size would be that we could scale to.
But you agree on the scale concept?
Yeah, we're on the scaling concept. If I could add, I think it would be helpful at the next meeting for those jurisdictions that aren't CA to have done some homework on what it will take to administer the projects, and if it seems feasible to have authorization in May 2022.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're going to be doing this exercise feverishly in the spring.
That was the second part I was going to add, and I think that's a very legit request, and we'll help out with that. So I've got this now, because Blake, as I understood what you were saying in Francisco's presentation, the city is open to reevaluating yours and scaling it back as well, correct?
Correct. And we can come
And-
back with some ideas on that.
Okay, and Paul and Jay, you guys, even as you were going through your presentation, opened that door as well. So what I've got is okay, all authors look to scale back. That's action 1. Scale back proposals. Bring back to group. Okay. And then
Well,
2, Sarita and Marana, Paul and Fausto. Let's start the discussion with ADOT. And let's make sure of the fees, what the administration, how's this going to work? Like I said, we were talking very basics when I was doing the look into. Catherine's point is legit. If ADOT's going to say, absolutely, we're going to draw a line in the sand, we're not touching you for less than $100,000. Okay, we may have to call the city or the county. What's that going to look, taste, and feel like? Can we proceed with a project in this way? Can we get it administered? That's your point. Because if it can't go and nobody's going to take it, that's back on the pot. Then we essentially don't have a funded project and the money then changes. I think that's a legit question. So Paul B and Fausto Dion, let's work on doing that. And Marana. Hey, Paul Casertano, are you available? Would you mind giving me a hand on that one? You've played in the federal pool with me. Nathan, we've got some folks internal that I think you got some experience. Are we okay? Can I volunteer us to help research that effort?
I think we can handle some of that internally, and I would suggest bringing the programming side of the house into the picture under Jamie and Carolyn and Nathan.
Yeah, Jamie, Carolyn, Nathan. Okay, that's why I was kind of lumping it all in. There's probably enough folks that have got some experience on that. So on research, project viability.
When you send out the minutes, will you provide contact or how to facilitate that?
Pardon me?
Provide contact or who to reach out to. So when I have Dion do her homework on this.
Let us take the lead. We'll reach out to you.
Okay.
So you and Paul Burton. Yeah, we here at PAG will work with you. Yeah, let us be lead with you on that. We'll make those contacts and figure out how to set that up. So yeah, we'll run with that. All right, so the proposal on the table then is basically we table this section, or I should say table it, we continue it. Everybody goes back. We had some first cuts at things. We reevaluate. In parallel with that, we look at how the smaller jurisdictions, can we do that with ADOT and administer that? And how that's going to look, and are there any fees that are going to be hidden in there we've got to introduce? And then we bring it back, and along those lines, trying to hit the deadlines. Take a look at calendars real quick and see if let's see. So the 24th would be 2 weeks.
Do we really need 2 weeks?
Are you thinking next Thursday we meet again?
Well, for the city of Tucson and Pima County, is that doable?
Would you guys turn around in a week?
Yes.
County says yes. Blake, Francisco, can you guys have a revised proposal ready to come back next week?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. Paul, Nathan, Carolyn, Jamie, whoever's still on, we could probably do our outreach with ADOT in that time frame, don't you think?
Absolutely.
So, Rick, the only thought I have is in terms of noticing the meeting and getting everything out, because if you're doing it in a week, we usually send everything out a week in advance. So I don't know if that's a factor as well. I mean, obviously we want to move quickly, but on our side, I think we can handle our assignment that you've given us. But in terms of just scheduling the meeting and all of that, that's just another factor to consider. Thank you.
What is the minimal time required to notice a public meeting? What is it, like 3 days? I know week is our typical protocol and we always use that, but does anybody know what the absolute bare minimum is done to get an agenda out and noticed it?
I'm not an expert. But I've heard it's at least 24 hours. We try to give as much time as possible if we've got a lot of materials. So I think, if someone else could confirm, but I think 24 hours is the bare minimum.
Okay, so certainly we can look to schedule a meeting, then we'll have to slam and jam an agenda together, because really it's going to be just this one item. It's going to be a continuation of this effort. So, okay, so let's aim for Thursday, the 19th, although it can, I'm going to make this request, if we can start it at 10 o'clock instead of our normal 9 o'clock.
I believe that should work for the city of Tucson.
All right, let's go with that as a game plan. I'll work with the crew on this end to verify and make sure that we're not violating any of our meeting protocols and that we can do something with that kind of tight turnaround. And let's plan on doing our homework, research, and coming back and sharing the latest and greatest findings at Thursday, the 19th. Lock out, say 10 to 11, 11:30. I think give us our little bit of cushion. Hopefully we can fly through this quicker than later. And then we'll put balls in motion to chase that out. Does that work for everybody? You guys are good with that?
Yes.
Says yes on this end. Anybody opposed to this? Okay, hearing none. We got game plan A. Then folks, that was the last item on the table. Any questions, comments on any of the stuff we've covered?
Hello, Rick, this is Hyun-Soo.
Yep.
I think I forgot one more thing, and so PAG is now just developing and a new DTA model, dynamic traffic assignment model. And so one of the important inputs is actually just the signal timing. So we'd like to ask just if you can kind of just send us any existing signal timing. I don't know which one is actually better, but we incorporated in just our previous test and current DTA model. And if you have any just signal timing like just a synchro file or just any accessible data, and it would be appreciated. And or just the send me or just the James, and James is actually taking care of this current just a DTA model. So or just we can kind of just if you don't mind, we'll reach out to you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Hyun-Soo. Okay, any other closing comments on any of the items we talked about, covered, went over? Hearing none, folks, thanks for your time. Thanks for the extra bit of running over. We'll be in touch. Meeting's adjourned, and we'll see you again on Thursday, and we'll be in touch between now and then. Be good, everybody.